celebrate like another aspect, of the island, that there is all those ingredients that are cultivated or raised, there, that end up in kitchen on chefs and restaurants or even home around the world, and people have no idea it's coming from Madagascar.
Thank you for listening to Serves You Right. My name is Andrew, and today I got a chance to sit down and speak with Emmanuel Laroche, author of the upcoming book, A Taste of Madagascar, Culinary Riches of the Red Island. Me and Emmanuel get a chance to talk through everything you would expect Madagascar, the vanilla, cacao, the honey, and everything in between. I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. I hope you enjoy hearing a little bit about a country far, far away from ours, but so fascinating. And thank you for listening to Serves You Right. Without any further ado, here is Emmanuel Laroche. Yeah, well, I'm not a bartender or a server anymore, but I still love that world, and I was in it for a long time. So now I'm just management, but yeah.
Okay, very good.
Awesome. Well, Emmanuel Laroche, thanks for joining us today. You've got some exciting things coming up, a new book, but I thought I'd start us off by just talking about the genesis of everything. You were involved in a competition involving vanilla, and I was hoping you could tell us about that.
Yeah. So first, Andrew, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. And so the genesis of this book, in fact, started way before I even thought about writing a book about the topic of Madagascar, and it was linked to, in fact, my day job. So I am in charge of marketing for a company that manufacture like natural flavors and extracts for the food and the beverage industry. In that responsibility, I decided to create a competition in the US. It started, I think it was like around 2019, before COVID. And the idea was to promote vanilla extract coming from Madagascar on the US market. And so the reason it's connected to the fact that the company I work for is based as well in Madagascar for more than 15 years, and have access to vanilla, because 80% of the world vanilla grows on that island. So I partner with a company called Star Chefs, and we reached out to a bunch of chefs, pastry chefs, and mixologists from around the US. And in 2019, so we picked 3 winners, and the grand prize was for me to take them to Madagascar to be closer to the source of vanilla. And so 3 individuals came with me, but we had to postpone the trip because of COVID.
Of course.
So in fact, we ended up being there in 2022, and that was my first trip to the island. And I took with me Elizabeth Faulkner, Chef Michael Gulota from New Orleans, and then the beverage director that was at that time at Death and Company. Her name is Shannon Tibay. Now she is beverage director. I think she's taking a new role in Las Vegas, I think in January. But that's the 3 of them, plus other people from my company, Simrise, and myself, went on that trip. So that's the context, of the competition you were talking about.
That's a great way to get a trip. Throw a competition.
Yes.
That way you're guaranteed
exactly.
a seat. Yeah. How many people applied for that? I'm sure it's a huge thing.
Applied, I think it was close to 80. I think we had like 80 submissions from that competition. And that's something that, Star Chefs organized, and it went through their network. And yeah, it was, I wanted to make sure that I had at the end a representation from like the kitchen, behind the bar, and then as well, not only savory culinary, but as well, sweets. So desserts and so pastry.
So you can hit a little bit.
That was the objective for me. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. All right. So you mentioned Madagascar is the home to about 80% of worldwide production of vanilla. Can you tell us, me and the listener at home, how exactly do they make vanilla? Why is it so expensive? You can just kind of give me the 80-20 of what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah. So before I go there, I probably need to give a little bit of context of vanilla. in Madagascar. So if people do not know, originally vanilla comes from Mexico. That's the source really of the vanilla beans. And vanilla is a vine. It's an orchid that grows on like a main support, like could be, a tree. And in Mexico, the flowers are pollinated by a little insect. When fast forward, when in fact the French took the different vine and try to implement it in other part of the world, and because at that time there was like a lot of French colonies around the world, around the tropics, so they decided to try to replicate, and they realized that in fact even if they took the insect with them, the insect never survived outside of Mexico. So the only way to pollinate, and I talk about it in the book, there's
The
kind of a
people by
legend.
hand, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's hand pollinated. So
Mhm.
but the legend is like it was like a slave from one of the grower that was on the Reunion Island, which is close to Madagascar. In fact, by accident, discovered that there was vanilla beans growing from the flower after something that he created several months prior. So that's the legend. But anyway, they realized that in fact that they had to hand pollinate which by the way, this is something really amazing. I had the trip that we took, with the American chefs took place in September and October of 2022. And that's the full season of the blossom for the orchid. So we had the chance to hand pollinate the flower and see the process, which like really put like a different perspective, going back to your question on the craft of making vanilla. You realize like everything that it takes in fact to transform a flower into like a green bean. It's a lot of work. The farmers have to wake up like very early in the morning. This is where the flowers in fact opens. So and then they have to do it, usually they use like a thorn, which is they take a thorn from like another tree nearby, and this is with the thorn and their thumb, this is the way how they pollinate the blossom. But anyhow, this all of this, and then they takes care obviously of those beans to grow and until the harvests, where in fact they are still green. And then after that, all the farmers are in fact selling their harvest to different company like the one I work for, where in fact the curation of the bean, they are cured in order to make like the process of from green vanilla beans to the brown vanilla beans that we know that we buy. And this is in fact during that process that the main component, which is vanillin, 2% of vanillin in each of the beans, and this is what gives the fantastic taste of vanilla that we enjoy. So there is a very long process. And going back to your questions of the price and everything, it's you have to keep in mind that there is a lot of like weather situation in that area of the globe. This is I forgot to mention that Madagascar, people that don't know, it's like 250 miles the east coast of Africa. And the idea is that there is the equivalent of the hurricanes in Indian Ocean. It's called cyclones. And then there's very often, cyclones that go through like the island, and they might destroy, everything, including, the vanilla plantation. So that's a lot of things that causes like the idea of like sometime price of vanilla are becoming much higher. So it's really linked to the offer and the demand on the market.
Sure, sure.
But this is yeah, and it takes a lot of risk as well. Those farmers, in fact, you have to imagine that they are negotiating the cost of the vanilla bean one day a year, and they are getting their income one day a year, and then they need to know how to manage that income, because for some of them it needs to last the whole year.
Yeah.
So you
You
can imagine.
ideally, you want it to last a year.
Yeah, ideally. I mean, we can probably talk about other things that, companies are doing to help them. And I think for people listening, it's very important to understand that it is critical to support them if we want to keep that tradition, if we want to keep that harvest over there, because we love to enjoy vanilla in the Western world, in cookies and baking. And there's a lot of tradition in the kitchen, not only the professional one, but the home kitchen as well. Vanilla for us is a symbol of nostalgia. And if we want to keep that, we need to make sure that we are supporting, people that are growing vanilla around the world, mainly in Madagascar,
Mhm.
because it's 80% of the crop.
Yeah, certainly. We're filming this close to Christmas time, and you think of the aromas of Christmas, and what do you think? Warming spice, vanilla, like it is right there in kind of our
Yeah.
most nostalgic and deepest memories.
Absolutely. I mean, I do remember when I was a kid, I learned how to cook and bake with my mother, like a lot of other people. That smell, that scent, aroma of the vanilla in the kitchen when in fact my mom was baking is something which is anchored, in
Mhm.
my memory. And that's something that you want to transmit, to like me, my own children and hopefully my grandchildren later. And in order to do so, we need to have access to, high quality vanilla. So,
My background is mostly in wine, and so I'm kind of understanding the vanilla process from that lens. And I could
mhm,
explain kind of where my mind's going here. In my mind, you hand pollinating the vanilla would be kind of like you going to an old school wine harvest and actually stomping on the grapes as we're making the wine. You got the same sort of setup where the grower has an one shot per year, one vintage to get their money. If it doesn't get in there, if it loses the
yep.
crop at a bad harvest, then they're out of luck. And so is that a good kind of analogous
Is
situation?
it is a very good. I never thought about it,
Mhm.
but listening to you, I said, yeah, it's very valid. The only thing is that usually the wine grower have a decent production, grape and so on. When I'm talking about farmers in Madagascar, there's all kind, and there's some that could be just like a family with like a couple with like two, three children, and they have 15 vines, and this is
Oh,
all what they
wow.
have. Some others may have like a whole, forest because it grows under like kind of a shade. And so, I mean, you have all kind of profile. It's not like when I say the word farmer, I want you to make sure that you don't have the image of
We're
the
picturing a
the farmers
Midwestern,
from the
yeah,
Midwest.
tractor.
Exactly.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. No, that's not at all what it is.
That is
But
it's actually
it is very just to finish that,
oh,
sorry,
sure.
but
No, no
it is
worries.
very important as well, for us to help them is to train them on taking on other crop, because that's going to help them to keep the vanilla, but as well get additional income, throughout the years. And that's what I have seen, when I was there, that it could be cocoa, for instance, or it could be cacao. So it could be, rice, obviously, because this is the main things that they feed from. And then it could be other, let's say, plants that are going to be very important for the perfumery, like for the fragrance industry. So they could grow, for instance, patchouli. There's three main ingredients that grows there on the island that the industry of the fragrance uses is patchouli, vetiver, and ylang ylang. Ylang ylang is the main component from Chanel number 5, for instance. So patchouli, they can have, if they plant patchouli, they can have 3 to 4 crops a year. So all of that contributes to give them more income. And if they have more income, that stabilize their household, and then they can continue growing and take care of vanilla. So that's something very important.
Teaching the Malagasy people to have a side hustle, essentially.
Yeah, more than a side hustle because this is their lifeline,
Sure, sure.
So
I was gonna ask, you kinda touched on it, but I was wondering if you could dig in a little bit more, kind of what the life is like for some of these farmers, because it doesn't seem like there's much above subsistent, like, living, essentially.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something that you expect, because I mentioned in introduction of the book that for the people that have heard about Madagascar beyond like the animated film,
Every time I
and that
looked up
it's
anything for this, that was the first thing that popped up, just so you
exactly.
know, yeah.
But you know that when I talked to people here in the US and I said I was writing a book about Madagascar, so some said to me, the movie, I'm like, no, no, I'm talking about the fourth largest island on the globe. And you mean like, what? It's a country? I'm like, yeah, it is. There's
It
30
exists.
million people. Yeah, it exists. So, but the idea is that we know going there because the only thing that we hear about when we hear about Madagascar in the news is that it's one of the poorest place in on Earth, which is true. There's a lot of we hear about it when there's a cyclone that hit the island and destroy like the vanilla fields. Yes, it is true that in fact there's there has been French colony for until the 1960. 1960 was the last year, in fact, when they became independent. That's true. That there is sometime as well corruption, at the government. All of that, this is true. But what I wanted to do is really to celebrate like another aspect of the island, that there is all those ingredients that are cultivated or raised, there, that end up in kitchen on chefs and restaurants or even home around the world, and people have no idea it's coming from Madagascar. And so I wanted deliberately, I took the approach of being positive,
Mm.
and yeah, I said there's enough people sharing, the negative aspects. But yes, I mean those farmers or other, people around the island had the chance to travel across the island on the 3 trips that I've made. Yeah, this is, they're very low level, of income, and they are very, I would say, short term, like driven. They want to make sure they can feed their family on the daily basis.
Which fair.
And that's why
Yes.
as well I'm sorry.
I said which fair. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, but that they're the fact that they have most of the time field where they can grow rice, because that's something important, something that I discovered that I was not expecting, that there's rice field like everywhere. That's the first things that you notice after landing
Mhm.
in Antananarivo, which is the capital of the island, the country. And so there's a lot of similarities visually with maybe pictures that you have seen from Indonesia, for instance, with like the rice fields. And they consume, in fact, 3 times per day rice. So from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, different style. Usually on the breakfast, it's a
Mhm.
soup. It's more like a side, like a dish for the lunch and the dinner.
Yeah.
But that's mainly what they are feeding from. The farmers that you mentioned, and yeah, this is again they want to make sure that they can have that rice, for their family, like on the daily basis. It's very challenging for them to project because this is a hardship, like from day to day.
Mm.
So not an easy life for sure. So that's true that the people that are growing vanilla or that then grow like other crops and so on, or I'm sure we are going to talk about it, but become beekeepers,
Oh
and
yes. Yeah.
they have like hives, and they have been trained how to take care of hives. If someone can have like 20 hives, for instance, for sure it's going to change their life, their income, and that's what a lot of companies, NGOs, are trying to foster there.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it, so I think that that's actually a really cool spot to go. Honey. And one of the
Yeah,
things I was going to think, we really needed to highlight is what is exactly the state of honey in the supermarkets in Europe? And how does what's being grown and produced in Madagascar differ?
sure.
I know that's a big question.
That's a big question.
Summarize
Yeah,
the
yeah.
entire industry. You got 5 minutes.
And I and
Go.
I'm
Yeah.
not and
Yeah.
I'm not an expert of the honey industry.
Sure, sure.
The things I can tell you, which is Europe or US, I will start with the state of the market, that unfortunately you can find a lot of blends coming from different sources around the planet, not easy to trace, especially in the US market, where in fact consumers are used to and enjoy honey that you can spread. So the honey, which is like golden color, see-through, translucent,
Mm.
and that's not the state of honey. Honey contain different type of sugar, and when it ages, it will crystallize. And I know Americans in general, people here like love the honey that doesn't crystallize,
Mhm.
but you have to be mindful of the fact that it might raise a question about the quality of the honey and the sources of the honey. So what makes like the honey from Madagascar, really unique? It's because it's, I would say, 100%. There's some regulation in place, so maybe it's 95, but percent coming from. I just want to mention it if someone is listening that is working
Yes.
in the honey industry said, "Oh, he said something wrong."
Yes. No, no,
So,
no.
but
Yeah.
the idea is that it's like coming from one source. So you can have lychee honey, which is one of the most popular on the island. By the way, Madagascar produces a lot of lychee,
Mm.
and then you can have lychee from like mangrove lychee. You can have primary forests, lychee, and so on. And they are going to crystallize some sooner than later, but it's very easy to slowly, like, warm them, like, up a little bit, and then they become, let's say, liquid again, and you can spread them. So, but the quality and, of the honey is amazing. And for the reason as well, it's because 90% of the fauna and the flora from Madagascar is only on the island. So it's a lot of endemic species that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And then you have access to those, I would say, different type of blossoms and trees, and that you will not find. So at the moment, I know that the honey from Madagascar is distributed throughout Europe, and I know some of the company are looking into exporting it as well in the US.
No.
It's being, in fact, negotiated at the moment.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it was one of the cooler things thinking lychee honey. My brother is really big into mead brewing. And so
Hmm.
he's done a couple of experiments with different honeys from different sources. And I thought, oh, lychee, I bet that would be good. Like really
Yeah.
good.
It's really amazing, and in fact, it's very the one that is the most accessible because it's very soft and a little bit floral, a bit sweet as well. So a lot of the children, for instance, love like the lychee honey. But then you have some others that are very specific, that have a very strong, profile. And in the book, in the chapter of honey, there is kind of a side note on the different type of honey from Madagascar, and then the way how it could be used. So if you can use it into like smoothies for some of them, and some others, it could be a great like culinary signature into like a savory dish, or it could be used, with grilling meats, or things
Mhm.
like that.
Have you ever
So
tried
what's something I discovered there?
I believe it's buckwheat honey?
No,
No.
I
They,
did
they,
not.
they make some in the US, very intense. It's almost black. It's something like
Oh wow. Okay.
but if you make a hot toddy with scotch, like, whew,
Aha.
yes, it'll warm you up. It's exactly what you want in that drink. But I wouldn't
Absolutely.
use
Yeah.
it in like anything else. A peanut butter jelly sandwich with a little of that. No, no
No,
way.
but maybe with the grill meat might
Maybe.
be good.
Yeah,
Maybe, or maybe a skewer, or, grilled meats. So
for
it could
sure.
be interesting,
For sure.
you know?
Can we talk a little bit about cacao too? Because I thought that
Hmm.
was really interesting, especially the different. I'm forgetting the words genotype or different. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you kind of walk us through what's unique about Madagascar cacao?
Yeah. So there's different, that three genotypes, and two comes to mind at the moment. I forgot the one in the
Yeah,
middle, the hybrids, but like the
there are no scientists
Forastero and the
watching. We just know they're different.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the Forastero and the Criollo, at least two out of three, not too bad. But the idea is that, so again, like honey, you have people growing cocoa around, or producing cocoa around the world with different, let's say, end game. You have people that are producing for volumes and mega brands, where in fact Forestero is usually the most used for that. And then you have more confidential production that really brings like a unique taste profile and more refined, cocoa quality. And that's usually where you have a higher percentage of, like the Criollo. So in Madagascar, it's a very small production. It's 0.1% of the global production of cocoa. But what would make it really fantastic is that there's people that have been working on the plantations of cocoa in order to have a higher percentage, of Criollo in the cocoa beans, like, produce. And it gives really a unique, I would say, terroir influence, which is this profile of citrus and red fruit that are very characteristic in cocoa. And you can find, in fact, that cocoa come from Madagascar here in the US. So there's one company that's 100% they use cocoa from Madagascar. It's called, of course, blank now.
Is it Whole Foods, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
the My gosh, it's in the book, and of course
You
now,
know what? I'll make
um,
sure to put it in the show notes. So yeah,
it
we
will
don't.
come back when I don't think about it.
Of course.
Beyond Good. Here we go.
Yes.
Beyond Good. And they are based in Brooklyn and they are working in Madagascar, producing in Madagascar as well. And then you can find also, it's easy to look. It's like single origins. That's what you need to, we are again during the time of Christmas. So, the holidays. So people need to look at this. But single origin cocoa is obviously where you have a highest quality. And you can find, origin Madagascar in a lot of like craft, like chocolate bars, in different, I would say, chocolate companies around the country. So that's really, something which is fascinating when you drive through like the big cocoa plantations on the north west side of the island, where in fact for miles after miles, it's like cocoa trees on the right, cocoa trees on the left, and it's under again a shade. That's how it grows. So another benefit of planting and having cocoa trees, for the farmers is that it participates to the reforestation, not the deforestation.
Which is a
Because
huge
in order to
thing.
grow the
Yes.
cocoa tree, you need to have that shade. So you need to plant first, the other trees and then develop the canopy. And a lot of like companies and farmers and so on, I've seen where they planted new plantations of cocoa to see like cocoa, to see like the insects and other plants and the lemurs as well, going back to those forests. So, which that's for me a positive sign that I have seen on the island of participating to the reforestation.
Yeah. It does kind of boggle my mind because the way you describe seeing the cocoa fields, are there just places in the world that are growing that much cocoa that it's only 0.1% of the global production?
Oh
Is
yeah,
it that
there's
they're just that artisanal and there are other like workhorses out there that are just pumping it out or
sure. I mean,
yeah.
there's other, and I mentioned it in the book, and again, I don't remember the stats, by heart, but I have like a side note to talk about like the main regions that are producing cocoa, but you have like areas of the world in Latin America or in Africa that this is what the main production
Mm.
is there.
It's what fields are here for me. I'm in
I
Omaha,
mean,
so
yeah,
yeah.
Ivory Coast is like 2 billion tons of cocoa. Madagascar is 15,000 tons.
Mm.
So you have Ivory Coast, Ghana, Indonesia, Ecuador, Cameroon, Nigeria. So all of those are producing much more, cocoa.
Yeah,
But this is, again, for a different end game for
sure.
sure.
Hershey's, if you will. Yeah.
You mentioned it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I mean, it sounds minuscule, but if you actually think a ton of those little cocoa pods, that's a ton. So,
No,
yeah,
exactly, and that's that can change the life of families, in and people, on the island.
yeah.
So that's something important.
Thank you again for listening. If you're enjoying this show, getting any value from it, please subscribe to the show. It really does help us grow. As a side note, we are going from 1 episode a week to 2 episodes a week in 2026. So every Tuesday and Thursday. See you there.
Critical to highlight, and I hope the people will get it when they read the book, is to maybe to look at like ingredients that we are using in our kitchen from a different perspective. And the idea is that the ingredients, fantastic for us to enjoy, we need to understand that a lot of ingredients that are coming from the US or outside of the US, there is like people's stories behind each of them, and there is a craft and there is tradition, and we need to be able to respect that. And I'm sure in your podcast, like on mine, when you talk to chefs, you talk to mixologists, something that is very like a common trait is that those individuals have learned how to respect ingredients and how to showcase ingredients, sorry, in a dish or on a dessert or in a drink. And I think for the consumer in general, we take maybe things too much for granted. And I think that it's if at least there's one thing that people get out of the book is after they read it is to look at their ingredients, to look at the vanilla beans that they have in the kitchen, from a different, standpoint, and understand what's everything that's behind. each of those beans.
Well, sure. And I think that that's part of the reason why the two words, kind of the buzzwords of the age, are sustainability and balance.
Hmm.
Sustainability is nothing but balance, but in a global sense. Just does everything have a place? Does it have a purpose? And does it have harmony with where it is? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
true.
also a really positive message to hear that during the holidays, you can actually do a lot more good than you would expect by buying some chocolate, just looking to see that it's single origin. So, and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
we're going to
true.
buy the chocolate anyways. Might as well vote for something good with our sweet tooth.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and educate ourselves and our friends and our family at the same time. Yeah.
can you walk us through how serious the problem of deforestation is?
Yeah, it is. It is an important one, and it really speaks as well to my heart. You were joking, before we started the recording that, obviously it sounds that I'm not from New Jersey, but from France, and obviously there's the history of the colonialism of period France in Madagascar, and I have to say that it contributed of like the phenomenon of deforestation because unfortunately when there's a you have like a colony like this in Madagascar, the main purpose is to leverage and enjoy like the resources, from a country like Madagascar. And there was one of the source for Madagascar was to provide very refined like quality of woods, like mahogany, type of wood and others. So very nice essence of woods, as we say. And then so a lot of forests were like destroyed in order to reach, those different varieties of wood. And when the French, in fact, left from one day to another in 1960, then Malagasy people continued to, doing what they knew, which is in fact was burning, like collecting the woods, burning the wood, cutting the woods in order to produce charcoal. And charcoal is like a very easy source of income. Everyone over there used charcoal, to for energy, either for source of heating, for cooking, or heating when they need to. So you see a lot of the sign of deforestation for charcoal production when you travel through the island. One sign is three comes to mind for me. The one sign is that you see sometimes in the distance, like smoke, in that you see coming outside of like forests
The
on the
active
hills.
progression, yes.
Yes, and then you can smell. There's regularly this acrid sense, of wood burning. That's very present. Second, when you go through those main roads, you see a lot of bags on the side of the road that contain the charcoal that have been produced. And the third one, if you go to different water canals, and then you see as well big, big, boats where with all those bags as well that are piled up, and then they are moving those charcoal in different parts of the country. So that sign of deforestation is omnipresent, and that's something that is very critical. And there is a lot of action from the NGOs and other companies that are installed there, educate people, to fight this. And in order to do this is you have to teach people to grow other things, so like bring them other incomes than that it will drop like their deforestation. And one of the that I've seen that was very positive was the bringing like the hives in people's gardens or area that they own and produce different kind of honey, because honey is part of like the tradition from the different tribes of Madagascar. There's 18 tribes still, living on the island, and a lot of them are in fact getting honey from the wild hives, in the forests. And the kids usually go there, they collect the honey, and then most of the time, unfortunately, they destroy the hive when they do that. Their NGOs and other companies have been teaching people how to take care of the hives and keep them and multiply them and so on. So,
Mhm.
which has been very positive. I've seen myself like a lot of farmers that I talked to and interviewed that, benefited from this. It's a lot of work, but when they know how to do it, well, then it gives them much more
Why
income.
wouldn't you? Yeah, and it doesn't sound like the deforestation is something done with malicious intent. We
No,
need income. We need
exactly.
yeah,
We need
so
to feed our family, exactly.
yeah, and how many people over here, if it was between feeding their family or burning the woods around them, would burn the woods around them tomorrow, you
Yeah.
know?
And
So,
and you know what? So other things can be done. It's just a question of, it takes time when you have to change habits, change culture. When you have a whole village that, they whole do something similar, produce like
this is how we've
charcoal.
always done it. Yes.
Yeah. And then if you have one individual that's been convinced that, oh, maybe he can do something different, then you can imagine how it could be perceived, from like other member of his family or other people of the village that said like, why are you doing this? So it's yeah, it will take time.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, it seemed like there was a theme of people in the book, the younger people going away to go and get educated and coming back
Yep.
to the island. Do you find
Sure.
that's happening a lot with the people you met?
Yeah, and in fact, I feel as well that there is big influence coming from the younger generation, like the Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And we noticed that when we were on the island, you're talking about making drinks, and we had the chance, in fact, when we were there to be juries of the first ever craft cocktail
Oh
competition.
yeah, it was,
When I prepared the trip, in fact, I had the chance to talk to one of the key mixologists from the capital. And when he heard that I was bringing with me three American chefs, and one of them being a mixologist, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the opportunity for me, to organize that first ever competition. That, by the way, he has continued, every year after that, which is great. But the idea is that I lost my train of thoughts now. What was your question again?
well,
Sorry.
no, we were talking about people going and getting educated off the
Yeah,
island, coming back. You were talking about the
exactly.
younger generation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there was a lot of the younger generation, a lot of Gen Z attending that craft competitions, and they were very exciting to see us and engage with us and asking, how was our life, where we were from, and in the US. And they were very positive about the future and very proud as well of their traditions and the ingredients. We have seen, for instance, that all the young bartenders was really illustrating their ingredients, that are like the pink peppercorn, the vanilla, the white black peppercorn that is endemic from Madagascar. They
Mhm.
try to bring this into their cocktail creations. And yes, a lot of them, so probably the generation above, so the person that became my friend and was my guide, that generation, so like 30, 35 years old, those people have been educated, outside of the islands. A lot of them came to France. My friend, went to Australia. Some other went to the US. And for them, it's like to get an education and then come back to the island to make sure that they can apply what they have learned by creating businesses to support other people and give the chance to other people in the island to, to.
No, and that's kind of a nice dichotomy there. You've got that generation scouring the world, saying, let's find out the best things that we can from the world and implement them here. Whereas you got the younger generation saying, let's find what's best here and celebrate it and grow from
Correct.
that. That's
Yep.
that's really cool.
Yeah, and in fact, the recent events in the on the island like really illustrated that. Again, Madagascar was on the news maybe a month ago or so, where in fact they kicked out like the current or the former president. It was kind of a coup organized, with military. And that was in fact started on the street by the Gen Z because they were fed up of like, they didn't have access to like water and electricity. They had some power failures and so on. And they said enough is enough. So it was kind of like the drop that of water that created that, really mass movement from the youth in Madagascar everywhere. And so they were able to facilitate, that coup. And now the new, I would say, government in place, which is temporary. They should have election within 2 years for a new president. And in fact, but their main focus of the current people in charge are to work with the Gen Z and try to fix, some of the things that needed to be fixed. So there's a lot of hope at the moment from coming from that younger generation, and I hope they will succeed.
That's awesome. I'm going to take a really hard left turn because I have to ask you this before we're done. Two things. Answer them in either order. Don't mind. Lemurs. Are they cool? Are they mean? Like, what's it like having all these lemurs around? Did you get to see a lot? And baobabs. Are they as weird as they look in pictures? So I know it's two
Two
really
great
random questions,
questions.
but
No, no, I've seen them very close because I had, in fact, two climbing on my shoulder.
they look like
So
little jokesters. They really do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the tiny one, which called the bamboo lemur, little brown ball of fur, and that decided to jump on my. We were walking on a small island on the lake, and I don't know, maybe he thought that I had maybe bananas with me because they love bananas. So, and I think he was probably asking, but he stayed like almost 20 minutes on my shoulder. I think it was probably very comfortable. And then another one, which is much larger. It's a black and white. I don't remember the name of it. And again, jump on my shoulder. This one was a little less. It was very nice, but it didn't stay, as long as the other. But they are fantastic. And the other one, which is the one that people know from, I would say, the movie, it's the one that has the tail, with all those stripes.
Ringtail or something like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so those ones are really cool. And you see them in the morning when you are into like a forest where, in fact, they live. They live by families, and they are kind of a ball of fur because they want to stay warm during the night. And then as soon as the ray of sunshine, comes through, then you see them. They are very funny because they are standing, and then they are spreading their arms on, and then they're standing on their 2 feet on the ground,
Hmm.
and then they are bathing in the sun. They are getting like, so when you are walking, you have them on the path, and there's maybe, I don't know, 10, 12 of them, and they are like this. So it's like really funny. So they are really cool. They are so nice that, in fact, in the past there were some people that were having them as pets, and now I think that they have a law that they created in Madagascar that it's now against the law to do that, because they are
Mm.
still wild, animals, and they should remain wild animals. But very cool. So I encourage everyone to jump on a plane, do 8 hours to go to Paris from New York, and then 10 hours from Paris to Antananarivo to enjoy the lemurs.
To go play with the lemurs, might as well.
And
Yeah.
then the baobab for me was very magical because when I was a kid in France, because of this culture of the colony, I've seen those pictures of baobabs in some of my geography books, at school. And I always dreamt they look like really weird because they are very tall, very big. And then on the top, there's like a little bit of structure of branches. But when you look it from far, you feel that it thinks that it's like a reverse tree, that in fact
Yeah. I worked with
the
this.
roots are on the
I
top.
worked
So
with a
it's like very
chef.
funny.
He was South African. He said that they had a saying in South Africa. Shane Alexander, God had cursed the baobab by ripping it up and turning it upside down.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like
it's a
it
good
pictures it.
picture.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they are, amazing. So on the first trip, I decided to stay an extra week, and after the chefs, left, the American chef left. And then I went to the west coast of the islands, Morondav, which is where that big Baobab Alley is. So, and I was able to walk several miles, and there's baobabs like everywhere. And it's very impressive. And I had a chance to have it in a moment where there was almost like no other tourists. So it was very silent, and it's very majestic. You almost, I think I read it, I wrote it in the book that, I put my hand on the trunk, and then I put my ears, and because knowing that those giants had been here forever, I was thinking, if they could talk, what could they say to me? But it's impressive. It's called like the tree of life. It's a special feeling. So I hope people get that vibe, when they read that part in the book.
Well, awesome. Yeah. We do need to start bringing this one home. I think we're getting close on time, and we didn't talk about a ton. Your armed transport. We didn't talk about the pepper. There's so many things. So if
Yeah.
someone at home is listening, knowing that we're missing all these stories, where can they go to find out more about you? Where can they find the book? where should you send our audience to go check you out?
Sure. Thank you. So they can look on the website. I have a page called Easy, the title of the book. So it's atasteofmadagascar.com, and they can see some videos that I've made, and then what the book is about. If they want to listen to me on the podcast, it's Flavors Unknown, and they can follow me on Instagram at Flavors Unknown, as well on Facebook. They can find the information, and they have the website, flavorsunknown.com for like the episode of the podcast. But yeah, I mean, they can read like other ingredients, like, the endemic wild black pepper, the pink peppercorn. That's the second country producing pink peppercorn after Brazil. So amazing profile. The chef from New Orleans was really convinced and fell in love with the pink peppercorn from Madagascar.
Yeah, we didn't even get to mention any single recipe. There are recipes throughout this book, so
yes, there's 15 recipes that were given to me by different chefs from the US, from France, from Madagascar.
It's awesome.
They are as well recipes that showcase like the new face of the chefs in Madagascar. So not all of them are going to be maybe easy to replicate, at home, because there's a bit of techniques, but definitely for your listeners that are mainly, cooks and chefs and mixologists, there's as well cocktail recipes.
Yeah.
They definitely will enjoy that.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier than a 20-hour altogether trip down there. So
for sure.
Emmanuel Laroche, thank you so much coming and talking to us about the Red Island. I appreciate it.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And as always, anything mentioned by Mr. Laroche will be included in the show notes. And thank you for listening to Serves You Right.
Thank you again for listening to Serves You Right. Episodes of this show come out every Tuesday and Thursday. If you have not had a chance, please go and check out the website, servesyouRightPod.com. You can find all past episodes and a contact form in case you need to get in touch with me. And soon, so much more. All right, that's about it. Thank you.